May 4, 2026. Beyond Moral Outrage, Reframing Governance, Tourism and Institutional Balance in Malaysia. Malaysia's debate surrounding the Rave Water Music Festival 2026 is not merely about entertainment, but about how a constitutional, multi-religious nation calibrates moral concerns against governance principles and economic realities. The concerns raised by Datuk Dr. Muhamad Akmal Saleh reflect a segment of societal anxiety, yet the more pressing policy question is whether such objections are grounded in enforceable standards or framed through selective interpretation that risks distorting institutional balance. Malaysia's constitutional framework is clear. Islam is the religion of the federation, yet the nation is not governed as a theocracy. Public policy must therefore operate within a structure that accommodates diversity while respecting religious sensitivities. This balance is not theoretical, it is embedded in regulatory practice, ministerial accountability, and legal oversight. Any criticism of a public event must therefore be assessed not by rhetorical description, but by verifiable compliance with laws, licensing conditions, and public conduct guidelines. 𝙬𝚊𝚘𝚑's position, as publicly articulated, highlights legitimate concerns regarding moral boundaries and social impact. Islamic jurisprudence does not reject entertainment outright, but emphasizes responsibility, moderation, and adherence to ethical limits. The Bayan Linas guidance cited reinforces this principle. However, it is essential to distinguish between advisory concern and regulatory breach. If an event complies with existing legal requirements, does not involve prohibited elements such as alcohol consumption, and adheres to safety and licensing standards, then the issue transitions from legality to perception. Public policy cannot be governed solely by perception, particularly when perceptions vary across a plural society. This distinction is critical. If regulatory decisions were driven exclusively by subjective discomfort, governance would become inconsistent and reactive. It would set a precedent where any organized activity could be challenged based on narrative rather than evidence. One might respectfully suggest that policy should be guided by structured criteria rather than volume of objection. Otherwise, institutional credibility risks being replaced by episodic sentiment management. The economic dimension further complicates the debate. Tourism remains a significant contributor to Malaysia's GDP, employment generation, and small business sustainability. Data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia and international tourism frameworks consistently demonstrate that large-scale events stimulate economic activity across multiple sectors. The framing of economic benefit as secondary to moral concern creates a false dichotomy. In practice, national policy must reconcile both. Economic vitality and ethical governance are not mutually exclusive. They are interdependent pillars of sustainable development. Ministerial decisions supporting tourism-related events should therefore be evaluated through measurable outcomes, compliance with regulations, inclusivity, economic impact, and maintenance of public order. To characterize such initiatives as inherently immoral without substantiated evidence risks oversimplification. It also raises questions about consistency. If similar standards were applied uniformly, a wide spectrum of urban activities, from concerts to cultural festivals, would face equivalent scrutiny. Selective application, however, suggests that the issue may be less about principle and more about positioning. The rhetorical tone of certain criticisms also warrants reflection. Public expressions that invoke extreme outcomes, including hopes for disruptive natural events, may resonate politically but do not contribute to constructive policy discourse. Governance requires proportionate response, evidence-based reasoning, and institutional respect. Emotional amplification, while effective in mobilizing attention, rarely translates into sustainable policy outcomes. At the same time, it would be inaccurate to dismiss moral concerns entirely. In a society where religion plays a central role, public sensitivity must be acknowledged. The responsibility therefore lies with organizers and authorities to ensure that entertainment remains within acceptable ethical boundaries. This includes clear guidelines on conduct, appropriate enforcement mechanisms, and transparent communication with stakeholders, a regulated framework that integrates both economic and ethical considerations is not only possible but necessary. The broader implication of this debate extends beyond a single event. It reflects how Malaysia negotiates identity, governance, and development in a complex socio-political landscape. When narratives lean toward absolutism, they risk undermining the very institutional balance that defines the nation. Conversely, when governance is anchored in law, evidence, and inclusivity, it reinforces both credibility and cohesion. Ultimately, the question is not whether entertainment should exist, but whether governance can manage it responsibly. Malaysia's policy framework already provides the tools to do so. The challenge lies in applying them consistently without succumbing to selective narratives or rhetorical escalation. A mature policy environment requires discipline, not dramatization. In this context, the Rave debate should serve as a reminder that governance is not a contest of moral superiority, but a responsibility to uphold balance. When institutions function as intended, they protect both values and progress. When they are drawn into selective contestation, credibility becomes the first casualty. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting my podcast news channel. Your time, attention, and engagement truly mean a great deal. I sincerely appreciate your continued support and thoughtful viewership. Join, follow, like, and share.